My name is Natalie Calloway. I'm 34 years old. And before everything fell apart, I used to believe betrayal would arrive loudly. I thought it would come with shouting, with doors slamming hard enough to rattle picture frames, with one ugly, undeniable moment you could point to for the rest of your life and say, there, that was the second everything died. I didn't know betrayal could sit down at a family table and still be treated like an inconvenience. I didn't know it could wear my boyfriend's face. And I definitely didn't know it could smile at me through my younger sister's eyes. My mother called me on a Tuesday night begging me to save the family business. Her voice was shaking so badly I almost didn't recognize it at first. She said my sister was in a coma. She said the company was 3 months from bankruptcy. She said I was the only one who could fix it. I let her finish. Then I told her I bought the company 7 months ago. She went silent. Not the kind of silence where someone is thinking of what to say next. The kind where you can practically hear a whole world collapsing inward. A silence so complete it sounded like her entire reality was trying to rearrange itself in real time. Then she said very quietly, "What do you mean you bought it?" I leaned back in my chair and looked out at the Portland skyline beyond my office window, all steel and glass and gray light. "Calloway Construction," I said. "The company Dad started. The company you handed to Ava when I left. I own it." She made a small sound in her throat, almost like she couldn't breathe. "I bought it through a holding company called Driftline Partners. The paperwork's been filed since September. You've been paying rent to me for 7 months and didn't even know it." She whispered, "That's not possible." I said, "Call your accountant. Ask who owns the building. Ask who holds the equipment leases. Ask who bought the outstanding vendor debts. Then call me back." She called back 14 minutes later, crying. But to understand why that call mattered, you have to go back 5 years. Back before Portland, before Driftline, before my name meant anything to anyone outside a narrow circle of builders and bankers, and people who respected delivery dates more than excuses. Back when I was still the daughter who thought loyalty meant something. My father, Gordon Calloway, started Calloway Construction in 1994. Commercial builds, strip malls, office parks, medical buildings, functional projects, unromantic work. The kind of business that didn't make magazine covers but could make a good life for a family if it was run well. At its peak, the company had 38 employees, $6.2 million in annual revenue, and contracts in 3 counties. I was supposed to run it one day. That had been the plan since I was 16. Not because I was entitled to it, because I earned my way toward it year after year while my friends were spending summers at lakes and beach rentals and figuring out who they were. I spent mine on job sites, walking unfinished floors in steel-toed boots that always felt half a size too big. I learned how to read schedules before I learned how to enjoy weekends. I got my project management certification at 22. By 23, I was running jobs. By 25, I was managing the company's 3 biggest accounts and personally overseeing $1.8 million in active contracts. I knew the subcontractors by name. I knew which inspectors could be reasoned with and which ones wanted every line item perfect before they'd sign off. I knew how to calm angry clients and how to push crews without humiliating them. I knew how to keep a project moving when weather, deliveries, and budgets all tried to kill it at once. I knew the business. My younger sister Ava did not. Ava was 31 now, but even at 26, she had already perfected a particular kind of irresponsibility that looked charming from a distance. She sold gym memberships for a while, then skincare packages, then something vague online that involved brand partnerships and inspirational posts. She went to bars. She borrowed money from our parents. She returned apologies dressed up as promises. She had the kind of beauty and easy laugh that made people want to give her one more chance, then another after that. She was the family's soft spot. I was the one they trusted with work. Ava was the one they forgave for everything else. My boyfriend's name was Ethan Langford. We had been together 4 years, living together for 2, talking about marriage in that careful, relieved way couples do when they think the hard part is over because they found each other early enough to build something stable. Our date was set for June. Venue booked, deposit paid. $4,200 out of my pocket for a room full of white flowers and warm lights, and the sort of polished happiness people photograph and post and pretend means permanence. Ethan worked in marketing for a tech company. Smart, funny, well-spoken. The kind of man who could walk into a room and make it feel calmer. He had a way of looking at me like he admired me, which back then felt rarer than love. Love can be loud, Admiration feels safer. I thought I had both. I was wrong. I found out 6 weeks before the wedding. Not from Ethan, not from Ava. From Ethan's coworker, Hannah. It was at a barbecue on a Saturday afternoon. Backyard string lights, cheap folding chairs, paper plates bending under overcooked burgers. Nothing cinematic about it. That was the part that made it worse. Life doesn't usually give you thunder when it's about to split in half. Sometimes it gives you potato salad and a woman pulling you aside near a fence because she can't watch you smile for one more minute. Hannah touched my arm and said, "Natalie, I need to tell you something, and I don't know how to do it without hurting you." My stomach turned before she even said the words. Some instinct deeper than logic. The body always knows first. She looked sick with guilt. Then she said, "Ethan and your sister have been seeing each other. I know because he told me, and Ava's mentioned it too. This has been going on for 3 months. I should have said something sooner, but they made me feel like it wasn't my place. I'm sorry. I can't watch you marry him knowing this." 3 months. My boyfriend, my sister. 3 months while I was handling $1.8 million in contracts, finalizing floral counts, picking cake flavors I barely cared about, and sleeping next to a man who had apparently decided my family tree was just another menu. I remember staring at Hannah's mouth and hearing the words without absorbing them, like my brain refused to let them in all at once because it knew too much truth too fast could kill a person. I asked one question. "Are you sure?" She nodded, eyes already wet. "I'm so sorry." I left the barbecue without saying goodbye to anyone. The drive home was a blur of stoplights and numbness. I don't remember the music, I don't remember traffic. I remember my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my fingers hurt later. I remember thinking, absurdly, that maybe there would be some explanation so complicated and strange it would bend reality back into shape. There wasn't. Ethan was home when I walked in. He was in the kitchen, opening a bottle of water, wearing the gray t-shirt I bought him the previous Christmas. He looked up and smiled the way people smile when they still think the next minute belongs to them. "Natalie, hey, you're back early." I cut him off. "How long have you been sleeping with Ava?" He froze. It was not a dramatic freeze. No bottle dropped. No denial came flying out. Just stillness. A terrible, tiny stillness that told me everything before he spoke. Then he set the bottle on the counter carefully, like his first instinct was to protect the granite from condensation. That almost made me laugh. He said my name the way cowards always do when they want to soften the impact of something they've already done. "Natalie," I said, "do not say my name like that unless you're about to tell me I'm wrong." He looked at the floor, then back at me. He didn't deny it. He just took a slow breath and said, "I was going to tell you." There are sentences so insulting they almost deserve applause for the effort. I was going to tell you. As if timing was the betrayal. As if the affair itself was just a scheduling problem. I said, 3 months? He nodded once. I asked, why? He rubbed the back of his neck. It wasn't supposed to happen. There it was. That sentence people reach for when they want language to erase deliberate choices. "It just happened," he said. "No," I told him. "Rain happens. Car trouble happens. You sleeping with my sister for 3 months did not happen. You did it." His face tightened then, maybe because truth sounds cruelest when it's simple. He said, "I didn't mean to hurt you." I laughed once, a sharp, ugly sound that didn't even feel like mine. "That is incredible, Ethan. Truly. Because in your attempt not to hurt me, you somehow managed to sleep with my sister behind my back while helping me plan our wedding." He flinched. "Good." I stepped closer. "Do you love her?" He hesitated long enough to wound me, more than the answer itself. Then he said, "Yes." The room changed shape around me. I had always imagined heartbreak as heat. A flash, a crack, something violent. But that moment was cold. I felt cold all the way down to the center of me, like my body had decided feeling less was the only way to survive the next few minutes. I asked, "Do you love me?" And the worst part? He looked sad. Not ashamed, not horrified, sad, like we were both victims of some mysterious force instead of his decisions. "I care about you," he said. Care. Not love, not enough, not anymore. I stared at him for a long second and understood, with terrible clarity, that there are moments when humiliation becomes cleaner than hope. Hope drags. Humiliation cuts. So I said, "Pick one." He blinked. "What? Me or Ava?" "Natalie. Do not make me stand here while you look for kind words. Pick one." He swallowed. Then he said it. "I already did. I'm sorry." He picked my sister. My younger sister, who had never built anything in her life except a trail of consequences other people cleaned up. He picked her over the woman who paid half the rent, booked the venue, built the plans, remembered the deadlines, and loved him like the future was something you could earn through consistency. For 1 second, I saw us from outside myself. My life, my apartment, my wedding invitation still sitting in a box in the hall closet, and him standing in my kitchen choosing chaos because it felt exciting. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw something. Instead, I stood there so still it frightened even me, and I said, "Get out." He whispered, "Natalie, please. Get out before I start saying things that will make this uglier than it already is." He left that night. I wish I could say that was the worst part. It wasn't. The worst part came Sunday. Family dinner at my parents' house. The same table, the same polished wood, the same framed landscape painting on the dining room wall that my mother had loved for 20 years because she said it made the room feel peaceful. Ava was there. So were my parents. I stood in the dining room and looked at the three people who had shaped my whole life, and I felt something inside me detach before I even opened my mouth. I said, "Ethan has been sleeping with Ava for 3 months. He told me she's the one he wants." My mother went white. My father put down his fork. Ava didn't deny it. She just looked at me with red-rimmed eyes, already wearing the expression of someone who wanted sympathy before consequences. My father, Gordon, said, "Is this true?" Ava nodded. "Yes." My mother whispered, "Oh my God." And for a moment, a tiny foolish moment, I thought maybe they would finally do the right thing. Maybe shame would find its way into the room. Maybe someone would say what should have been obvious. That what Ava did was cruel. That Ethan was garbage. That I had been betrayed in the most intimate, humiliating way possible by two people who should have protected me. Instead, my sister started crying, and the room bent toward her. Ava pressed a hand to her mouth and looked down like she was the one struggling to survive the scene. "I didn't mean for it to happen like this," she said. There it was again. That pathetic little sentence people use when they want to make betrayal sound accidental, as if there had been no texts, no meetings, no secrets, no deliberate steps taken in the dark while I was still picking centerpieces and confirming guest counts. I looked at her and said, "How exactly did you mean for it to happen? Were you hoping I'd mail you my blessing with the wedding invitations?" "Natalie," my mother said sharply. That was the first moment I understood where the night was going. Not toward truth, toward management, toward damage control, toward whatever version of reality made this easiest for Ava. I turned to my father. "Say something." Gordon rubbed a hand across his jaw. He looked older than he had a minute earlier, but not because he was devastated for me, because he was already calculating how ugly this could become if anyone decided to be honest. He looked at Ava. "Do you love him?" I nearly laughed. That was his question. Not how could you do this to your sister? Not what kind of person betrays family like this? Not Natalie, I'm sorry. "No. Do you love him?" Ava sniffed and nodded. "Yes." My mother closed her eyes briefly, then looked at me with that soft, careful expression she used whenever she wanted me to swallow pain quietly, so the family could move on with minimal disruption. "Natalie," she said, "I'm so sorry. This is terrible." But even then, I could hear the turn coming before it arrived. My mother had a gift for starting with sympathy and ending somewhere that required my sacrifice. She took a breath and continued, "But if Ava and Ethan clearly have real feelings for each other, then maybe this is a sign that things weren't meant to be between you and him." I stared at her. There are moments when someone says something so breathtakingly wrong that the world goes still around it, not because the words are loud, but because your entire understanding of that person rearranges itself in a single instant. My mother was telling me that my younger sister stealing my boyfriend 6 weeks before our wedding might be some kind of cosmic correction, as if betrayal had divine approval if the people doing it felt strongly enough. I said very quietly, "Don't do this, Mom." She frowned. "I'm not doing anything." "Yes, you are. You're taking her side and dressing it up like wisdom." Her face hardened just enough for me to see the truth behind the performance. "I'm not taking sides. I'm saying sometimes people fall in love and no one can control that. We need to handle this as a family." As a family. I almost choked on the phrase. My father nodded once. "Your mother's right. This is painful, but we need to move forward." Move forward. That was the language of people who don't want accountability, because accountability is inconvenient. I looked at him. "So that's it?" "What do you want me to say?" Gordon asked. I took a step toward the table. "I want you to say what she did was wrong." Ava started crying harder. "Natalie, please." I ignored her. "I want you to say Ethan is not welcome here. I want you to say that what happened to me matters more than keeping dinner comfortable." My father exhaled through his nose. "You're upset." The sheer insult of that sentence almost knocked the breath out of me. Upset. Like I was having a difficult day. Like someone forgot my birthday. like this was emotion in need of management instead of betrayal in need of consequences. I said, "Of course I'm upset." Gordon leaned back in his chair. "Fighting about this isn't going to change anything. Ethan made a choice. Ava made a choice. It's done." "It is not done," I said. "It is happening right now." Phyllis, my mother, said, "Natalie, you cannot make this into a war." I looked from one face to the next. My mother already trying to smooth over the wound. My father already speaking as if the damage were an unfortunate weather event. My sister crying into her napkin because tears had always worked better for her than truth. And in that moment, the affair itself almost became secondary. Because romantic betrayal is one kind of pain. Family betrayal is a deeper one. A man can stop loving you. A sister can betray you. But when your parents watch it happen and decide preserving peace matters more than protecting you, something foundational breaks, something childhood shaped, something old. I said, "If you choose her on this, you lose me." My mother let out a disbelieving laugh. "Don't be dramatic." I can still hear it. Not because it was loud, because it was so familiar. That tone, that dismissal, that lifelong expectation that I would be the stable one, the reasonable one, the one who could absorb impact while Ava got allowances for being messy. I straightened and said, "I'm not being dramatic. I'm telling you exactly what happens next. You choose Ava and I disappear. That's the deal." My father spread his hands. "Nobody's choosing anybody. We're a family." "Then act like one," I said. Nobody answered. I looked at Ava. "Tell them." She looked miserable enough to be convincing if you didn't know her. "I didn't want this to hurt you." I actually laughed that time, and everyone flinched because it sounded wrong even to me. "You didn't want this to hurt me?" I repeated. "You slept with the man I was going to marry. For 3 months. While sitting at this table pretending to be my sister, what part of that was supposed to feel kind?" Her face crumpled. "I didn't plan it." "No," I said, "you just kept choosing it." That shut her up. I turned back to my parents one last time. "This is your chance," I told them. "Right now. Tell me you're not okay with this. Tell me there are consequences. Tell me I still matter in this family." No one spoke. Ava looked at her lap. My mother looked at the wall. My father cleared his throat. That was my answer. I pushed my chair back so hard it scraped against the floor like a warning. Then I picked up my bag and walked toward the front door. My hands were shaking, but my voice wasn't. "That's what I thought," I said. No one came after me. Not my mother. Not my father. Not even Ava. I left that house and drove with both windows down, even though the air was cold enough to sting, because I needed something sharper than the inside of my own head. By the time I got back to the apartment, the silence felt louder than screaming would have. Ethan had texted 6 times. "Please talk to me. I never wanted it to happen like this. I know I handled this badly. Can we be adults about this? I still care about you. Please don't tell people until we figure this out." That last one made me stand in the kitchen and smile in a way that felt almost dangerous. Not "Are you okay?" Not "I'm sorry." Not even "I know I destroyed your life." Just, "Please don't tell people until we figure this out. Protect the image, contain the fallout, manage the narrative." I blocked his number and sat on the kitchen floor for a long time with my back against the cabinets, staring at the refrigerator like it might explain how a life can be intact on Friday and unrecognizable by Sunday. The next 3 days were administrative. That's the ugly part no one tells you about grief. Even when your heart is splitting open, there are still vendors to call, deposits to cancel, emails to answer. There are practical humiliations stacked neatly beside emotional ones. I canceled the florist. I canceled the photographer. I canceled the catering order and lost part of the deposit. I called the venue and heard the coordinator's tone change when I said the wedding wouldn't be happening after all. She was kind in that professional way strangers are when they can hear devastation but don't want to touch it directly. I packed Ethan's things into boxes. Socks, jackets, razors, the ugly blender he insisted was good for protein shakes, his winter coat still hanging by the entryway like he'd be back for it. All the small evidence of a shared life turned into inventory. 3 days later, he came to collect his things. I almost didn't let him in, but I wanted the apartment cleared. I wanted no trace of him left behind when the dust settled. He looked terrible. Not terrible enough. He looked like a man who hadn't slept much and had discovered that guilt is uncomfortable when it finally reaches your own skin. He stepped inside slowly, glancing around at the boxes lined up by the wall. "Thank you," he said. I said nothing. He started packing the last of his clothes from the bedroom, while I stood in the living room with my arms crossed, keeping my distance like he might leave a stain if he got too close. For almost 2 hours, we barely spoke. Then, while taping one of the boxes shut, he said, "There's something else." Of course there was. There always is. I didn't move. Say it." He stared at the cardboard for a second too long. "Ava's pregnant." The room didn't spin. That would have been merciful. Instead, everything sharpened. The lines of the furniture, the hum of the refrigerator, the sound of tape lifting from the roll in his hand. Grief can blur things, but humiliation makes them painfully clear. I asked, "Mine or yours?" His face twisted. "Natalie." "Answer me." He swallowed. "Mine." For a second I couldn't speak. Not because I didn't have words, because I had too many. Ava was pregnant. My sister was carrying my ex-boyfriend's child, while my canceled wedding invitations were still sitting boxed in the hall closet. And somehow he thought he deserved a careful conversation. He said, "We found out last week. I wanted to tell you before you heard it from someone else." Before I heard it from someone else. Like that was consideration. Like he was offering dignity. Like being notified directly was some kind of favor. I looked at him and realized that what had once been love had become something flatter and colder than hate. Hate still has heat in it. This felt like emotional frostbite. I said, "Take your things and get out." "Natalie, I know this is awful." "Get out." He tried again, softer now. "I never meant—" I stepped forward then, and whatever he saw on my face made him stop talking. "Leave the key," I said. "Leave anything I paid for, and if Ava wants sympathy, tell her to find it somewhere else." He nodded once. No defense left, no speech, no appeal. Just shame finally arriving after all the damage had already been done. At the door, he hesitated like he wanted to say goodbye. I stared at him until he left without trying. When the apartment went quiet again, I locked the door, walked to the bathroom, and threw up. Then I sat on the tile floor and cried harder than I had cried at any point before that. Not delicate tears, not movie tears, the kind that make your ribs hurt and your face swell and your whole body feel insulted by its own helplessness. I cried for the wedding, for the apartment, for the version of my sister I thought I had, for the fact that my parents had seen me bleeding and asked me to keep the carpet clean. At some point, I got up, washed my face, and looked at myself in the mirror. I expected to see ruin. Instead, I saw something else. Not strength, not yet. But clarity? A very dangerous kind of clarity. The next morning, I took the ring Ethan had given me, still sitting in its box because I couldn't bear to look at it before, and sold it. $6,800. That was what 4 years of love, 8 months of engagement, and a future I had trusted turned into when reduced to cash and handed across a counter. I deposited every dollar into a brand new account under an LLC I formed that same week. Driftline Partners. At the time, it was just a name. A private place to put money I intended to grow far away from everyone who had failed me. But sometimes the first brick matters more than the size of the house that comes later. That Monday morning, I walked into my father's office at Calloway Construction. He looked up from a stack of invoices, annoyed at first, then uneasy when he saw my face. I don't think he'd expected me back so soon after Sunday. I don't think he imagined I'd come in as calm as I did. "I'm done," I said. He frowned. "Done with what?" "With this company, effective immediately." His expression hardened. "You can't leave right now. You're running 3 major accounts." I set my office keys on his desk. "Transfer them to Ava," I said. "She's the one you chose." He stood up too fast, irritation flashing into panic. "Ava doesn't know construction." I held his gaze. "Then you have a problem," I said, "but it's not mine anymore." For the first time since the affair broke open, he looked at me as if he understood the consequences might reach past feelings, past family discomfort, past his preferred illusion that everything could be managed if people just stayed practical enough. "Natalie," he said, trying for authority, then softening when that failed. "Don't make permanent decisions when you're emotional." I almost smiled. That was always the trick, wasn't it? When Ava exploded her life, it was because she was following her heart. When I responded to what she had done, I was emotional. I said, "This isn't emotional. This is the clearest I've ever been." Then I turned and walked out. By that Friday, I had packed my apartment, loaded my truck, and left town. No forwarding address. No goodbye dinner. No final appeal. Just a tank full of gas, $22,000 in savings, 7 years of construction experience, and a silence so complete it felt like cutting my own shadow loose. Portland was 2,100 miles away. That distance saved my life. As I drove west, mile after mile, with the highway stretching out like a sentence I hadn't finished writing yet, I realized something I should have understood sooner. The people who broke me expected me to remain available. They expected me to stay close enough to be useful, close enough to forgive, close enough to rescue, close enough to watch them build a new life out of what they had taken from mine. I decided, somewhere between one state and the next, that I would never again be standing in the wreckage asking people to choose me. I would build something they could never touch. And one day, when they needed saving, they would find out exactly what they had thrown away. When I arrived in Portland, it was raining. Not dramatically, not the kind of storm that makes you feel like you've entered a new life with cinematic emphasis. Just steady gray rain that blurred the edges of everything and made the city feel distant, like it wasn't quite ready to let me in yet. I liked that. It matched how I felt. Unwelcome, unattached, uninterested in being known. I checked into a short-term rental with 2 suitcases, a laptop, and a silence I hadn't broken in days. No calls, no texts. My phone buzzed the entire drive west. My mother, my father, even Ava once. But I never answered. I didn't block them. That was worse. Within 2 weeks, I had a job. A mid-sized commercial builder called Greystone hired me as a senior project manager. $88,000 a year, more than my father had ever paid me, even when I was carrying the company's biggest accounts on my back. That should have made me angry. Instead, it clarified something. Out here, I wasn't Gordon's daughter. I wasn't the responsible one. I wasn't the counterweight to Ava's chaos. I was just good at my job. And for the first time, that was enough. The first 6 months were brutal in the best way. Long hours, tight deadlines, new teams that didn't know me and didn't care about my past. Every ounce of respect I had, I earned again from zero. And something strange happened in that process. I stopped thinking about Ethan, then Ava, then even my parents. Not all at once, not cleanly, but slowly. Like noise fading from a room you didn't realize was too loud until it disappeared. I ran my first project at Greystone, a $4.5 million medical office build, and delivered it 2 weeks early and under budget. No drama, no excuses, just clean execution. The owner noticed. His name was Richard Thatcher, late 60s, sharp eyes, the kind of man who didn't waste compliments, which meant when he gave one, it mattered. He called me into his office after the project closed. "I've had 40 project managers in 20 years, he said. "You're the best I've seen." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just nodded. He leaned back in his chair. "I'm retiring in 3 years. I want someone to take over." There it was. The offer I'd been trained my entire life to want. Ownership. Succession. A company handed to me because I had proven I could run it. 5 years earlier, I would have said yes without hesitation. But something had changed. Maybe it was the distance. Maybe it was the way my last inheritance had been taken from me and handed to someone who couldn't carry it. Or maybe it was simpler than that. I didn't want anything that could be taken away again. "I don't want to take over someone else's company," I told him. "I want to build my own." He studied me for a long second. Then he smiled. "Good," he said. "That's the right answer." I blinked. "It is?" "If you wanted mine, I wouldn't trust you with it," he said. "But if you want your own, I'll help you build it." That was the moment everything shifted. We structured a deal, 60-40. He would invest. I would run operations. He brought capital and experience. I brought execution. Driftline Partners, the name I had created in a moment of quiet anger back in that apartment, became something real. Not just a place to store money, a company. The first year, we did $1.1 million in revenue. The second year, 2.8. The third year, 5.4. I hired 22 people, bought equipment, won contracts not because of a last name, not because of family connections, but because we delivered. Every time. On schedule. On budget. Without excuses. There was no drama at Driftline. No emotional negotiations. No family politics bleeding into business decisions. Just work and results. While I was building that life, something else was happening, 2,100 miles away. Calloway construction was dying. I didn't know all the details at first. I didn't ask. But information has a way of finding you when you understand how to look for it. Public records, vendor chatter, industry rumors that move quietly through the kind of conversations people think no one important is listening to. And slowly, piece by piece, I saw what was happening. Ava took over my accounts. Within 4 months, she lost 2 of them. The third held on for about a year before the client walked, citing missed deadlines and cost overruns. The projects I had built relationships on, years of trust, reliability, delivery, collapsed in less than 12 months under her management. My father tried to recover. He hired 3 different project managers over 3 years. None lasted more than 10 months. Because the problem wasn't staffing. It was leadership. Revenue dropped from 6.2 million to 3.1 to 1.8 to under $1 million. A slow bleed, the kind that doesn't make headlines but kills you anyway. And Ava? She didn't get better. Because people like Ava don't suddenly become disciplined under pressure. They break. Or worse, they continue exactly as they are and expect someone else to absorb the consequences. She used company funds for personal expenses. $14,000 on a client trip that was actually a vacation. $8,500 on equipment that was never returned because she sold it. My father didn't catch it, because my father had always trusted Ava the way he never trusted me. Blindly. Unconditionally. Without asking for proof. Meanwhile, the company started borrowing. $180,000 line of credit. Then $320,000. Then a $500,000 SBA loan, personally guaranteed by my father. Everything on credit. Nothing owned outright. The building they operated out of? Leased. The equipment? Financed. The company that had once been stable, solid, grounded, was now a house built on borrowed time. And Ava? She was building a different life. With Ethan. They had a son. They lived in a house my father helped them buy, $40,000 down, pulled from company funds that should have gone back into operations. That detail stayed with me longer than anything else, because it wasn't just mismanagement. It was preference. They had taken what I built and used it to fund her future, while mine had started on a mattress in a rented room in a city where no one knew my name. That should have made me bitter. Maybe for a while it did, but by the time I saw the full picture, something else had already taken root. Distance changes things. Pain, when it's not constantly reopened, turns into something quieter, more precise, less emotional, more strategic. I didn't call them. I didn't confront anyone. I didn't demand accountability. Instead, I started watching. Year 4 was when I made my first move, not as Natalie Calloway. That name still carried too much history, too many assumptions, too many emotional ties. No, I moved as Driftline Partners, a holding company. Separate from my construction firm. Separate from my name. Clean. Untraceable. I bought the building Calloway Construction operated out of. The previous landlord was tired of dealing with late payments and instability. He wanted out. The building was worth $1.1 million. I bought it for $840,000. Cash. Closed in 22 days. No complications. No drama. Just paperwork. Next, I bought 3 outstanding vendor debts. Concrete supplier. Electrical wholesaler. Lumberyard. Calloway owed them a total of $186,000. I bought those debts at 70 cents on the dollar, $130,200 out of pocket. Now, Calloway didn't owe those vendors anymore. They owed me. Then I bought the equipment lease portfolio. 7 leases, 4 of them already 60 days late. The finance company was eager to offload the risk. I took all 7 for $94,000. Excavators, loaders, dump trucks, everything they needed to operate. All of it now belonged to Driftline. Not because I wanted revenge. That's the part people always misunderstand. Revenge is emotional. This wasn't. This was inevitable. When a company starts failing, its pieces become available, and someone always buys them. I just made sure that someone was me. The building, the equipment, the debt. 3 legs of a company that couldn't stand without them. I didn't announce it. I didn't reach out. I didn't even let them know I existed in that equation. I just waited. Because eventually, something would happen that forced them to look up. Forced them to realize what they had lost. And when that moment came, I wanted to be the one they had to call. It happened on a Saturday night. 11 p.m. Ava ran a red light. She was drunk. 0.14 blood alcohol. Nearly twice the legal limit. A delivery van hit her driver's side. The impact crushed the door inward. She was in surgery for 9 hours. She survived. Barely. But the brain damage was severe. She went into a coma. She's been in that coma for 6 weeks. The doctors say she might wake up. Might not. Might be months. Might be years. And just like that, the person my parents had chosen over me, the one they trusted with everything, was gone. Not dead, but unavailable. And suddenly, Calloway Construction had no one left. My father was 67. His back was bad. His health worse. He couldn't run job sites anymore. My mother handled the books, but she didn't understand operations. The company was 3 months from collapse, and their only competent daughter was 2,100 miles away. That's when my mother called. The Tuesday night call, the one where she begged me to come home, to save the company, to save the family. And I told her, I already owned it. She cried harder the second time she called. Not loud, not hysterical, just broken. The accountant confirmed it, my mother said between breaths. Driftline Partners owns the building, the equipment, the debts. Natalie, that's you. You own everything. I closed my eyes for a moment, not because I felt guilty, but because hearing her say it out loud made the past 5 years collapse into a single, plain in line. Yes, I said. There was a long pause. Then she asked the question I knew was coming. How long have you been planning this? I leaned back in my chair. 18 months, I said. Since the company started circling the drain. I didn't interfere. I watched. I waited. And when the pieces became available, I bought them. You watched? She whispered. You watched us fall apart? I let the silence sit there long enough to mean something. Then I said, you watched me fall apart first. That landed. I could hear it in the way her breathing changed. You're going to destroy us, she said. I almost smiled at that. Mom, I said calmly, the company is already destroyed. She didn't answer, so I continued. $500,000 in SBA debt, $186,000 in vendor debt, 60 days late on equipment leases, revenue down 85% in 5 years. That's not my work. That's Ava's. She started crying again, softer now. Your father guaranteed that SBA loan personally, she said. If the company folds, we lose everything. The house, his retirement. I know. The words came out flat. Because I did know. I had reviewed every document, every loan, every asset, every mistake. I knew exactly what would happen if things collapsed, which meant I also knew exactly how to stop it. You know, she repeated, voice cracking. And you're just going to let that happen? That question hung there, heavy, loaded with everything she hadn't said 5 years ago, everything she had chosen not to see, everything she had minimized, everything she had asked me to move forward from. I turned my chair slightly, looking out over the city again. You let my boyfriend get taken by my sister, I said quietly, and told me to be practical. She didn't speak. You let Ava run the company I built into the ground. Silence. You let her use company money for vacations, for a house, while I was sleeping on a mattress in Portland building something from nothing. A shaky breath on the other end. And now, I finished, now that your favorite child is in a hospital bed and the company is dying, you call me. That was the truth of it, stripped clean. No emotion needed to make it sharp. She whispered, we made mistakes. I nodded, even though she couldn't see it. Yes, I said, you did. Another long pause. Then, carefully, like she was stepping onto thin ice, she asked, what are you going to do? Finally, the right question. Not a demand. Not guilt. Not expectation. A question. I leaned forward slightly, resting my elbows on the desk. I'm going to restructure the company, I said, under Driftline Partners. She inhaled sharply. I'm going to renegotiate the SBA loan, bring in my own team, rebuild the client list, stabilize operations. Hope crept into her voice. So, you'll save it? Yes. The relief in her exhale was immediate. But I wasn't finished. It won't be Calloway Construction anymore. Silence again. Thicker this time. He built that company, she said quietly. Your father. I know who built it, I cut in. And I know who destroyed it. She didn't respond. It will operate as Driftline Northwest, I continued. My company, my name, my rules. That's not fair, she said. I actually laughed then. Not loudly, but enough. Fair, I repeated. Was it fair when you told me to move on after Ava slept with Ethan? Was it fair when you gave her the company I built? Was it fair when you funded her house with company money while I was starting over from zero? She didn't answer, because there wasn't one. The truth has a way of ending conversations. Finally, she whispered, you're punishing us. I shook my head. No, I said, I'm running a business. And that was the difference. Punishment is emotional. This was structural, measured, necessary. There was nothing left for her to say, so she hung up. My father called the next morning. No tears, no hesitation, just anger. You can't do this, Gordon said the second I answered. I held the phone away from my ear slightly, letting him burn through the first wave. That company has my name on it, he continued. You don't get to take it apart like this. I waited until he stopped. Then I said, your name isn't on the building lease. Silence. It's not on the equipment. Another beat. It's not on the vendor debts. He exhaled sharply. That's not the point. It is the point, I said. The only thing your name is on right now is a $500,000 SBA loan that I can either restructure or let default. That stopped him. Because for the first time in this conversation, we weren't talking about pride. We were talking about consequences. Real ones. I'll sue you, he said finally. You bought those assets to sabotage us. I leaned back again. You can try, I said. But every purchase was made at market value. Documented, verified, arm's-length transactions through licensed brokers. My attorney has everything. He didn't respond. Because he knew. Gordon Calloway might have been stubborn, but he wasn't stupid. He understood business, which meant he understood what I had done. And even if you did sue me, I added, you'd spend money you don't have to lose a case you can't win. The silence stretched. Then, quieter now, he said, "You're doing this because of Ava." I let that sit. Then I said, "I'm doing this because 5 years ago, you chose someone who couldn't run the company over someone who already was." He exhaled slowly. "That's not how it happened." "That's exactly how it happened." Another pause. "Then, more controlled now, what do you want?" There it was. Not anger, not authority. Negotiation. I sat up straight. "I want the SBA loan restructured under Driftline," I said. 7-year repayment. Your personal guarantee released. No interruption. "I want full operational control of all existing contracts." Silence. "I want access to every financial record from the past 5 years." A breath. "And I want the Calloway name retired." That one hit. I could feel it through the phone. "That's everything," he said. I didn't soften. "You gave everything to Ava 5 years ago," I said. "She gave it to bad decisions. I'm the one cleaning it up." He didn't argue. Because again, truth doesn't leave room for much else. "I'll think about it," he said finally. "You don't have much time," I replied. "The SBA won't wait forever." He hung up. Oh. He didn't sign. Not that week. Not the next. Instead, he fought. Of course he did. Pride is the last thing people let go of, even when everything else is already gone. He hired a lawyer, filed a complaint claiming I had engaged in predatory acquisition, that I had targeted the company, manipulated its decline, coerced ownership. I expected it, prepared for it. My attorney responded in 6 pages. Every transaction documented, every price validated, every purchase conducted legally. No connection to me personally. Just a holding company making smart decisions in a failing market. The court dismissed the case in 19 days. Gordon's legal bill? $7,200. Money he didn't have. That didn't stop my mother from trying next. She called my aunt, my uncle, cousins. Within 1 weekend, I got 11 calls. Different voices. Same message. Family comes first. I answered one. My Aunt Rita. "Natalie," she said gently, "your father is falling apart. Your mother can't stop crying. Ava is in a coma. The company is dying. You need to come home." I stood by my office window, watching the rain hit the glass in thin streaks. "I am fixing it," I said. "That's not what I mean. I'm restructuring the company, saving 14 employees who did nothing wrong, renegotiating debt so Dad doesn't lose his house." She hesitated. "Then why won't you just come back and help them?" "Because that's what they wanted." Not help. Control. Familiar roles. The version of me that bent. "I am helping," I said. "Just not as the backup daughter who gets called when the favorite fails." "That's not fair," she said softly. "Your parents love you." I closed my eyes briefly. "They loved me enough to tell me to move forward when Ava took my boyfriend," I said. "They loved me enough to give her the company I built. They loved me enough to fund her life while I started over." Silence. "That's their version of love," I added. "I have a different one." She didn't call again. Ethan called. First time in 5 years. I almost didn't answer. Almost. But curiosity won. "Natalie," he said, like he wasn't sure he still had the right to say my name. "What do you want?" Straight to it. No softness. No history. Just distance. "I heard about the company," he said. "About everything." Of course he had. News like that doesn't stay quiet. "I have a son," he continued. "He's 4 now." I said nothing. He swallowed. "Ava's in a coma. I don't know what's going to happen. We live in the house your dad helped us buy. If the company goes under..." "You won't lose the house," I said. He paused. "What?" "It's in my father's name," I explained. "The down payment was a gift, not a loan. It's not tied to the company." Silence. Then, cautiously, "How do you know that?" "Because I know everything now." "I reviewed every financial document your life has touched in the last 5 years," I said. "I know where every dollar went." He didn't respond. Because there's something unsettling about realizing the person you underestimated understands your entire world better than you do. After a moment, he asked, "Are you doing this to get back at us?" I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was small. So small compared to what this actually was. "Ethan," I said, "I haven't thought about you in 3 years." That hurt him. I could hear it. "Good." "This isn't about you," I continued, "or Ava, or the engagement, or any of it." "Then what is it about?" I looked out at the city again. "At 14 people who show up to work every Monday and deserve a paycheck," I said. "People who didn't betray anyone, who didn't make reckless decisions, who just did their jobs while the company was being destroyed." He was quiet. "Those are the people I'm saving," I said. "Not you." "That's cold," he muttered. "No," I said. "That's business." By week 3, my father still hadn't signed. The SBA was closing in. 90 days from default. If that loan collapsed, they would take everything tied to his personal guarantee. The house, retirement, everything. My attorney called. "He's running out of time," Whitfield said. "If he doesn't restructure soon, the SBA files." "I know." There was a pause. Are you going to let that happen? I looked down at the city below, at everything I had built, at everything they had lost, at the distance between those two things. No, I said finally, but he needs to ask properly. Week 5. My father got on a plane. For the first time in my life, he came to me. He didn't call when he landed. He didn't ask to meet at a restaurant. He didn't try to make it comfortable. He went straight to my attorney's office. That told me everything I needed to know before I even saw him. This wasn't a father coming to talk to his daughter. This was a businessman walking into a negotiation he couldn't afford to lose. I arrived 10 minutes early. Old habit. Control the room before anyone else gets there. Whitfield was already inside. So was my CFO, Diana. Sharp, precise, the kind of woman who could read a balance sheet like a crime scene. She gave me a small nod when I walked in. No questions, no sympathy, just readiness. That's what I had built. People who showed up prepared. People who didn't need emotional context to do their jobs well. When my father walked in, I almost didn't recognize him. Not because he had changed completely, because the parts that had always defined him, confidence, certainty, quiet authority, had been stripped down to something thinner. He looked smaller, 67 years old, back slightly bent, the kind of tired that doesn't come from lack of sleep, but from consequences catching up all at once. For a moment, we just looked at each other. 5 years of silence standing between us. 5 years of everything unsaid. He broke first. I need your help. No build-up, no defense. Just that. I nodded once. I know. He pulled out a chair slowly and sat across from me. I made mistakes, he said. That word again. Mistakes. It almost felt too small for what had happened. But I let him continue. Giving the company to Ava. He swallowed. That was the biggest one. Diana didn't move. Whitfield didn't speak. I stayed still, letting him finish. She wasn't ready, he said. She wasn't you. There it was. 5 years late, but real. I knew that, he added quietly. And I did it anyway. The room went completely silent, because that was the truth stripped of excuses. Not confusion, not bad luck, a choice. I thought she needed something, he said. Something to anchor her. And you. He hesitated. You didn't need me. That landed differently, because it wasn't entirely wrong. I had never needed him to survive, but I had needed him to choose me. Just once. I needed you to choose me anyway, I said. My voice didn't shake. That surprised both of us. He looked down at the table, then back at me. You're getting that now, he said. I didn't answer. I'm here, he continued, in your city, in your office, asking for your help. Another pause. That's me choosing you. 5 years too late. But still, I felt it. Not forgiveness, not closure, just acknowledgement. And that was enough. For now, I leaned forward slightly. Here are the terms. No emotion, no hesitation. Just business. Driftline acquires all remaining Calloway assets, I said. Fully. He nodded once. The SBA loan gets restructured under Driftline. 7-year repayment. Your personal guarantee is released. Another nod. The Calloway name is retired. That one made him flinch. But he didn't interrupt. All current employees are retained, I continued. Every one of them. Diana made a small note. You sign a non-compete and a release acknowledging insolvency and fair market acquisition. He exhaled slowly. That's everything. I met his eyes. Yes. He sat back in his chair, processing. Then he asked, what about me? There it was. The last piece. Not pride. Identity. I'm offering you a consulting role, I said. 2 years. $60,000 a year. His eyebrows lifted slightly. You train my team on any client relationships that still exist, I added. After that, you retire. He let out a quiet breath. 60,000 isn't much. I didn't soften. Your company was effectively worth 680,000 when I acquired the pieces, I said. You drove it into insolvency. 60,000 a year to consult is generous. Diana didn't look up. Whitfield remained still, because we all knew it was true. Gordon looked down at his hands. For a long moment, he didn't speak. Then, quietly, I'll sign. I nodded once. I know. The restructuring took 28 days. Clean. Efficient. Final. Driftline absorbed everything. The SBA reviewed our financials, our credit, our projections. They approved the restructuring. My father's personal guarantee was released. His house was safe. His retirement accounts untouched. I saved him, not because he deserved it, but because 14 employees did. Because clients did. Because the company that had once been something real deserved a better ending than slow collapse. The paperwork closed. The name changed. Calloway Construction disappeared. Driftline Northwest took its place. My company. My rules. 3 weeks later, Ava woke up. Partial recovery. Speech slow. Motor function limited. The doctor said months of rehab. Maybe years. The DUI charges were still pending. License revoked. Whatever life she had before was gone. Ethan stayed. Of course he did. But the life they had built, the one funded by shortcuts and second chances, had shrunk into something smaller, more fragile, more real. He got a job. Retail, $15 an hour. Their son went to daycare. And for the first time in her life, Ava had consequences no one could fix. A message came through my attorney. From Ethan. He was asking if there was a position at Driftline for Ava. I didn't answer him directly. Whitfield did. A formal decline. No explanation needed. Some doors don't reopen. A week later, I flew home. First time in 5 years. Not for them, for the company. The building looked smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I had just grown past it. I stood across the street for a moment, hands in my coat pockets, looking at the place that had once been my entire future. Then I crossed. Unlocked the door. Walked inside. My building? My company. My name on the documents that owned every wall, every machine, every contract. I walked down the hallway slowly. Everything felt familiar. And not. The same floors, the same offices. But the energy was different. Cleaner. Quieter. Like something toxic had finally been removed. I stopped outside the office that used to be mine. The one I had run $1.8 million in contracts from. The one my father gave to Ava. I opened the door. It was a mess. Coffee stains on the desk. Unfiled paperwork stacked in uneven piles. A parking ticket from 8 months ago pinned to the board like it meant something. I stood there for a second. Then I rolled up my sleeves. 2 hours. That's all it took. To clean it. To reset it. To make it mine again. When I was done, I sat in the chair. My chair. In my office. In my company. And for the first time in 5 years, everything was exactly where it should have been. My phone buzzed. A message from my mother. Thank you for saving your father. I stared at it. Another one came. I know we don't deserve it. Then, I know we chose wrong. And finally, I'm sorry it took losing everything for us to see what we had in you. I read it. All of it. Every word. Then I locked my phone and set it on the desk. No reply. Not out of anger. Not out of spite. But because some apologies arrived too late to require answers. I leaned back in the chair and looked out through the office window at the rows of desks outside. 14 people working. Talking quietly. Doing their jobs. Getting paid. Because I decided they deserved stability more than my family deserved punishment. And in that moment, I understood something clearly. I was never the backup. I was never the second choice. I was the one building the entire time while they were busy choosing someone else. They chose Ava. Ava chose chaos. And I chose distance, discipline, patience. I chose to build something they couldn't take, something they couldn't ignore, something they would one day need. And when that day came, I didn't ask them to choose me. I didn't need to. Because some people don't become valuable when they're chosen.